Hello and welcome to Patrick Come Lately Talk Radio. This is Stefan, your host, British by birth, American by choice. The Founding Fathers crafted some remarkable documents that led to the creation of a great country founded on liberty and self-reliance. I have lived in the Euro-socialist nightmare, and I'm doing what I can to return this country to the vision that the Founding Fathers gave us. We need to strive to rebuild that shining city on the hill, for without us, the world has nowhere to turn for freedom. For the next hour, I will be presenting news, views, and guests that help keep the true spirit of America alive. And good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whenever you are listening to this 266th episode of Patrick Come Lately Talk Radio. This is Stefan, your Patrick Come Lately, British by birth, American by choice, and very proud to be with you again tonight. Lots to talk about. This show is coming to you again from southwest Florida, but we've got lots to talk about, and as the title of the show says, some good news for a change. There's also some interesting news about King Barry, the Queen, and also about Hilliar herself and her foundation lurching from problem to problem. But let's look at some of the good news first of all. And the first good news will be, yes, the British elections. Of course, with my heritage background, I like to look across the pond and try and use it to show what could be happening here in the US in the near future. And I just love reporting this, because if this is going to be happening here in the near future, yes, the British elections took place last week. And of course, you have to remember in the UK, we don't have elections on a regular schedule. When the government is elected in, or when the elections have taken place and it turns out who is actually has the most votes is allowed to set up the government, and when that government is set up, they have 5 years from that election before they have to call another election, but up to 5 years. So they can do that at any time that is either convenient for them, or if they feel that they have been hit with a no confidence motion, so or if get defeated in other ways, or the public is against them, or if they think they've just done some very good things a lot of the time, then they will, after about 3 years, the Prime Minister at the time will call another election because he thinks he's riding on a wave and it would be a good time to do it. And they're quite, it's quite legal for them to do that as well. So no fixed time frames other than the 5-year limit. And so there were elections in Britain last week, and all the pundits, all the pollsters were saying it was going to be a tight race. Well, the words that were used by broadcasters, columnists, and of course the experts and the pundits and the pollsters were shocked, surprised, stunned. And of course that was because the Conservative Party cruised to an unbelievable victory. In actual fact, one of the other parties, the so-called Liberal Democrat Party, which is really the middle of the road party over there, and one of their past leaders, Paddy Ashdown, was so certain that the exit polls were wrong that he announced on the BBC, so I don't know if that was the radio or TV, but on one of the main channels there, he would publicly eat his hat if they were right. Well, I hope you're hungry, Paddy, 'cause yes, When the actual results came in, not only were the exit polls wrong, they were hugely wrong. A total Conservative sweep, the Conservatives having been the majority party, but having to have had a coalition for the last few years because they didn't have the absolute majority. They were the largest party, but not to have an absolute majority. So they actually shared power with the Liberal Democrats Party. Well, the Conservatives had a huge sweep. The Liberal Democrat Party was decimated. So people were punishing them for being in the coalition with the Conservatives. And there's a good reason for that. Basically, I think people look at it and say, well, if we're going to vote for the Conservatives, we might as well vote for a Conservative and not for the Liberal Democrats, because even if we vote for them, we're going to have a Conservative government anyway, so we might as well vote for the Conservatives. The only exception to the Conservative sweep was Scotland, where the Scottish Nationalist Party, a fairly left-wing party, by the way, swept into power. I think they went from about 11 seats to 50 seats in Scotland, something like that, but not very much at the cost of the Conservatives, because in Scotland the Conservatives were very weak. I think they had one or at most 2 seats, but it was the Labour Party that lost out there. So they lost out in the UK, they lost out heavily in Scotland, and so just absolute decimating for them. So instead of this tied result and a hung parliament and all sorts of machinations, and they were even, some pollsters were predicting that Labour could form a coalition with the Liberal Democrats and the Scottish National Party and in that way form the majority. Not a hope of a snowballs in the warm place. Ed Miliband, who was the leader of the Labour Party most recently, and everybody thought he might become the next Prime Minister. Well, he ran a campaign attacking the rich and promising higher taxes. And guess what? The Brits didn't want it, which was, of course, very good for Britain, I think, not so good for Europe. And so Miliband, after the election, did the honourable thing, and that's one thing it seems the British politicians still do, did the honourable thing and resigned. If we'd have had that, Harry Reid would have been out of the Senate ages ago, or at least 2 years ago after that defeat. Pelosi would have resigned from her leadership position after getting the drubbing in the 2012 election and then in the 2014 election. But no, here our politicians don't have any honour. They're in it for the long run. But in the UK, they resign. Now, I have to say they don't resign necessarily from their seat in Parliament, but they do resign from their leadership positions. So Miliband resigned, Nick Clegg, who was the leader of the Liberal Democrats, and also, surprisingly enough, the UK Independence Party, Nigel Farage, all resigned, according to the news, within minutes of each other in a scene reminiscent of the Watergate-era Saturday Night Massacre. So just the Scottish National Party, whose leader, Nicola Sturgeon, was there. That means David Cameron, who leads the Conservatives, and still does, very obviously, will have some time to they called it a honeymoon, to enact some of his agenda, while the other parties, the Labour Party and the Liberal Democrats and also the Independence Party kind of have to reform. The Independence Party was hoping to get a number of seats. It has one at the moment, two, and it lost one of those, so it went backwards by 50%. They are sometimes a little extreme, but they are one that advocates leaving the common market, the European Union, and also stopping immigration. Well, one of the reasons that David Cameron was probably so successful was because those are some of the things that Cameron has promised the Brits he would do. So here's some of the things he promised to do. He promised to devolve powers across Britain because of the nationalism in Scotland and Wales, and calls for those two countries to become independent from England. Earlier, or late last year, there was a referendum whether or not Scotland should leave the United Kingdom, and it was defeated, but of course with the Scottish Nationalist Party becoming more powerful again, that may come back, and Cameron has promised to put more power to these individual countries, or if you want to use the word, states. Yes, that's right. Cameron has promised to take away power from the center. So imagine a president giving away power from Washington and giving it back to the states. I wonder if that's why he was so successful. Would that be a good platform for one of our candidates to take? Another one was another priority of Cameron's was the repeal of the Human Rights Act that they have in Britain, which has been used by terrorists and criminals to avoid prison and deportation. And he also promised to curb immigration, which, like in America, has become an uncontrolled flood. So let's look at that. Conservatives can win in Britain, but also in the US, when they articulate and stick to their principles and show that they stand more for average people than the rich. Cameron took language straight from the Labour Party's playbook when he spoke of supporting working people. That was one of his main themes as he went around the country campaigning. In the days before the election, a lot of the people had said he was too laid back, but Cameron got up to speed and got fired up in the days before the election, and he cast aside traditional British stiff upper lip, speaking with force and conviction. American conservatives, take note, take heart. If David Cameron can do it, maybe one of our candidates will learn that you can stand up for what you believe in and be elected, because that's exactly what he did. Now, interestingly enough, just like in Israel, we had American political operatives assisting the two parties. Miliband was advised by David Axelrod, who probably made about $500,000 for his advice, even though he failed. And Cameron, surprisingly enough, was supported by Jim Messina. Now, Jim Messina is very interesting because he normally supports the Democrats in America, but it shows that while we don't know how much he was paid, it's probably at least equal to what, or close to what Axelrod got, and shows that these liberals will do anything for a nice fat paycheck, even trump their own ideology and support the conservatives. Now again, I want to remind my listeners that conservatives in Britain are not quite the same as conservatives in the US. They're probably a bit more to the center, maybe even a bit more to the left, right? Call them blue. They're more like blue dog Democrats than real conservatives in our country. But even so, they are the most conservative of the particular political spectrum in the UK, and so these conservatives being successful, it has hope for us. So very interesting that that happened. Like I said, good news, because there is hope for us. If we can get a candidate who will stand up like David Cameron, guess what, folks? We could be in with a chance. Let's just tell the truth, Conservatives, and stand by your principles, and things can work. Okay, I see it's time for a commercial break, so I will be back after these messages.
You can lose 10, 20, 30 pounds or more with Maximum Slim's first ever rapid weight loss guarantee. Today, you get Maximum Slim, an advanced fat and carb blocker, absolutely risk-free. The all-natural ingredients in Maximum Slim are a powerful weight loss combination. The Maximum Slim formula turns your body into a fat-burning furnace that supercharges your weight loss. Advanced fat and carb blocker stops the breakdown of sugar so your body doesn't store it as fat. Today, you'll get both of these products absolutely risk-free with no obligation. Only pay shipping. There are no expensive meal plans or exhausting DVDs. Just take Maximum Slim twice a day. It's fast, simple, and now it's guaranteed. Look, you can start losing weight today or not. Go back to your high school days and wear your favorite jeans again. Guaranteed. Call now and get both weight loss formulas free. Call 800-451-0228. 800-451-0228. That's 800-451-0228.
Doc, you gotta give it to me straight.
All right.
'Cause I'm dying here. I mean, take a look at this letter from the IRS.
Oh, my.
This is killing me, Doc. I tell you, it's killing me.
Cheer up, my friend.
Huh?
The tax doctor is here. My diagnosis tells me that you're going to be just fine.
Really?
The tax doctor will not rest until we find you the best possible tax settlement.
Really, Doc?
Guaranteed.
If the IRS claims you owe them $10,000 or more in business or personal back taxes, call a tax doctor right now. We could save you up to 75% if you qualify. Guaranteed, or you pay nothing. Call right now for free details.
800-917-8546. 800-917-8546. 800-917-8546. That's 800-917-8546.
This is Patrick Come Lately Talk Radio, coming to you live via the internet, via rebroadcast on WRSDB, the Red State Talk Radio Network, or from the recordings at archives.patrickcomelately.us.
And thanks for sticking with me through that break. Just a little reminder here, if you are listening to the show live, that is on Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. Please do join us in the chat room. I'd like to say hi to Paul, who's in there right now. Our other regular hasn't appeared tonight. It's unfortunate. But if you're there, do join us and chat away. I pop into the chat room as much as I can. Obviously, doing the show. I'm not like a Hannity or a Limbo or a Glenn Beck with all sorts of minions around me and sound people and whatever. I do it all myself, so I can't be in the chat room and doing the show at the same time. But in the commercial breaks, I do try to pop in and answer questions and comments. And of course, you can also email me at stefan@patrickcomelately.us. Send me an email there with your questions, comments, and I will answer you by email, but I will also answer you on the show. Anyway, let's go on to our next topic. And while the United States waits with bated breath for the Supreme Court to rule on King versus Burwell, yes, one of these Obamacare cases, there is something slipping underneath the radar. And this is, in a way, more good news, because this is another case against Obamacare, and it's made its way quietly to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia, and this one actually has an even better chance of torpedoing the Unaffordable Care Act. This case was brought by an individual called Jeffrey Cutler, who's a tax collector in a township in Pennsylvania. And he received notice at the end of 2013 from his health insurance company indicating that his plan did not qualify for renewal under the rules established by the Affordable Care Act, or Unaffordable Care Act, or Obamacare, whatever you want to call it. So Cutler's been in the same plan since 2007. He was satisfied with his coverage and he didn't want to switch. So remember, if you like your plan, you can keep it. Yeah, sure. Now, Obama announced a transition policy in November 2013 under political pressure from both Republicans and Democrats that promised to allow individuals to temporarily keep their health insurance plans, even if they wouldn't have qualified for renewal under the Act. But the transition plan was not applied universally. State governments had the authority to decide whether or not to allow their own citizens to keep their plans. And here's where it begins to get interesting, because the Pennsylvania state officials made it possible for Cutler to keep his plan, but only if his insurance company agreed, and his insurance company did not, and so he lost his insurance on the 1st of January 2014, and he has been without health insurance since then because he doesn't like the plans in the government alternative, right, in the exchange, the insurance exchange. So Cutler actually filed suit representing himself at the end of December 2013, so it's about a year ago, alleging that Obamacare violates his constitutional rights on 2 counts. And this is where I think it gets very interesting. First, he says that the transition policy, known as the administrative fix, and of course, in a way, in of itself, it is unconstitutional because by putting in that fix, Obama was actually changing the law or tweaking the law. So that's debatable. But anyway, however, Cutler says that this administrative fix violates the Fifth Amendment's guarantee to equal protection under the law. Now, why would that be? Because every state was given the authority by the federal government to apply the administrative fix differently. Obamacare did not exist equally in every state. Now remember, Obamacare is a federal law, and the federal laws have to abide by the Fifth Amendment, by the Constitution, right? When you get to the states, it's a little different, but the Constitution was there to restrict the federal government from too much power. So if the federal government says something, it has to apply equally everywhere, and if it doesn't, it's unconstitutional. Man, is that good news? It is tremendous news, because it's a very good argument that would torpedo Obamacare. But like they say on the infomercials, but there's more. So what more is there? Well, the second argument is that Obamacare violates the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment, right? The First Amendment says that the government is not allowed to favor any one religion. Now, Cutler, who happens to be Jewish, and that's a religion that is not exempt from Obamacare's mandates, he he says, because it's true, federal agencies under Obamacare unfairly give certain religious groups the freedom to avoid having compliant health insurance plans without paying a penalty. Amongst others, the Amish are not required to do so, and I believe Muslims can opt out because it's supposedly against the Quran to take insurance. By making this exception, the regime has opened themselves up to the second torpedo, because Obamacare clearly favors some religious groups over others. 2 torpedoes right smack them in the middle of the ship. Boom, boom. This ship is going to be sinking. Now, the regime is going to do everything they can to prevent Mr. Cutler reaching the Supreme Court, because when this reaches the Supreme Court, I can't see the Supreme Court ruling any other way than it is unconstitutional. They may be able to twist it and tweak it a little bit, that only certain parts are unconstitutional. I don't see that happening. This is really good news. Of course, the regime filed a motion in the district court for dismissal, claiming Cutler lacked proper standing. And a friendly judge to them granted the dismissal, but Cutler appealed the decision to the U.S. Court of Appeals, and they are hearing the case, and oral arguments were scheduled for round about this time. Now, how can they say he lacks proper standing? He's affected directly. I mean, this is... I can't understand. I mean, this is just totally nuts. But let's see what... Now, Cutler is now being represented by some constitutional lawyers that are helping him from the American Freedom Law Center, and he's confident that he will bring down Obamacare. He says, and I quote, "My case is a full-blown frontal attack on the constitutionality of the law. Many of the other cases are about minute parts of the law. King versus Burwell is about 5 words. Hobby Lobby's suit was about contraception. My case strikes at the heart of Obamacare and the administrative fix that was unconstitutionally applied after the Unaffordable Care Act's passage." I call it the Unaffordable Care Act, by the way. That wasn't his words. And apparently West Virginia attorney Attorney General is filing suit on behalf of his state, alleging similar claims. So it isn't just Cutler either that's doing that. A research fellow specializing in healthcare at the Heartland Institute says he believes that Cutler is correct. At the very least, his First Amendment rights, and probably those of many other people, may have been violated under the ACA. This is not unexpected, considering Obama's massive healthcare reform bill is the most complex piece of legislation in the history of the world. Well, Cutler expects this to go to the Supreme Court. I hope it does as well, because this is really going to put the cat amongst the pigeons, and that is, let's face it, that is good news, because it's a chance to get rid of that onerous and terrible thing. And of course, the Constitution is important. We have to follow the Constitution. I like to think of myself as a constitutionalist. A lot of people say this document is outmoded. Well, Justice Scalia was talking about this at a conference at a speech to the Federalist Society in New Jersey recently, and I'm going to go to the end, because he said something at the end of his speech when asked some questions, and interestingly enough, Mark Levin picked up on that, because the question that Scalia was asked was the following. He was talking about the Constitution being a structure, and setting a structure and setting something around which you can build things. And he said the less done to the Constitution, the better. During the question and answer session, someone asked if a constitutional convention would be in the nation's interests. He said, "A constitutional convention is a horrible idea. This is not a good century to write a constitution." Well, Mark Levin jumped on this because, and I have a lot of respect for Mark Levin. but I think in some ways he's slightly wrong here. But yes and no. He thought this person was asking actually about the Article 5 Constitutional Convention. I've talked about this a lot on the show. And I think Scalia did not interpret it that way and said a full-blown constitutional convention is a horrible idea. I'm going to think the best of Justice Scalia and say that, because I agree with that. But Article 5 one, oh yes, that, because that's not a full-blown constitutional convention. It just adds amendments and changes the Constitution in that way. Anyway, folks, it is time for our second commercial break. Ooh, time flies when we're having fun. So, folks, stick with me. I will be right back.
Patriot come lately. British by birth. American by choice. Just like the Founding Fathers. The voice of the conservative resistance.
Every day, millions of Americans grow more concerned about the future of our great nation. The truth is, over the last century, a small but powerful collectivist movement known as progressivism has debased our politics, our culture, and our currency. We're just a small step from falling into 1,000 years of darkness, as Ronald Reagan warned. Friend, this is Pat Boone with an important free offer on a hot new book called The Great Withdrawal by Craig Smith and Lowell Ponte. This new book explains how we, the people, can end this fatal detour into big government and get back on the path of faith and freedom charted by our founders. Call now for a free copy of the hot new book called The Great Withdrawal.
Call now for your free copy. 800-978-3901. 800-978-3901. 800-978-3901. That's 800-978-3901.
Owe $10,000 or more to the IRS that you can't pay? Call now for immediate help. At the Tax Relief Line, we help people just like you. If you take on the IRS alone, you could be facing levies, liens, even wage garnishments, personal or business tax issues. If you owe $10,000 or more to the IRS, call now and see if you can pay less. They can freeze your bank accounts, even garnish your wages. Call the Tax Relief Line now for immediate help. Our expert team of tax professionals will negotiate your tax problem and deal with the IRS for you. If the IRS is threatening you with levies, wage garnishments, or seizing your assets, call now and see if you can pay the IRS less.
888-789-5043. 888-789-5043. 888-789-5043. 888-789-5043.
This is Patriot Come Lately Talk Radio, keeping the spirit of America alive, a proud member of the Red State Talk Radio Network.
And thanks for sticking with me through that break. A reminder, if you like the show, tell your friends, family, acquaintances. If you don't like the show, tell your enemies, but tell folks. We need to get these messages out. 2016 is coming, and if we look at the first half of the show, all the good news, good things can happen. If we can find a honest, straightforward, frank, conservative politician who will speak the truth and stick to his principles, we can win. David Cameron showed us. We can beat Obamacare. Mr. Cutler is showing us that that's possible. It's an unconstitutional act, and we can beat it. And of course, Scalia. I want to talk a little bit more about him, but I may save that for another show, because he says the Constitution is the important part, not the Bill of Rights, but the Constitution is really the heart of everything, and that's what we have to follow. Now, the Bill of Rights is important, the amendments, because they do form part of the Constitution, so that's where I disagree with them a little bit, but then again, I'm not a Supreme Court Justice. What would I know? But anyway, before we go to our other topics, and now we've got perhaps a few of the less nice ones, let's just have a little piece of music to jolly things along.
Taking my country back, putting it back on the right track. Corrupt politicians making bad decisions, we all had enough of that. If our founding fathers could talk today, I could hear them say, hey, take your country back, my friend. You gotta take your country back. Get out of my way or step on this train. I'm headed to my Washington house to let those suckers know on election day I'm gonna kick most of them on out and shout no more high taxes. We want a free market system. We don't like socialism. See, we believe in capitalism. And we love our children, and we love this nation. So let's protect our borders and protect our freedom. I'm taking my country back, putting it back on the right track. Corrupt politicians making bad decisions, we all had enough of that. If our founding fathers could talk today, I can hear them say, take your country back. Oh yeah, son, you gotta take your country back. Take your country back. Oh yeah, you gotta take your country back. Now Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and John Quincy Adams too. If you could go to Washington one more time, what would you say or do? I'd say no more high taxes. We want a free market system. We don't like socialism. See, we believe in capitalism. And we love our children. And we love this nation. That's why we wrote the Constitution, to protect our freedom. So start taking your country back, putting it back on the right track. Now corrupt politicians making bad decisions, we all had enough of that. If our founding fathers could talk today, I could hear them say, take your country back right now. Yeah, you gotta take your country back. I'll take your country back right now. Son, you gotta take your country back. Oh, take it back. Take it back. And put it back on the right track. Oh, take it back. Take it back. And put it back on the right track. And put it back on the right track. Oh yeah, God help us take our country back and put it back on the right track. Yeah, put it back on the right track. Oh, take it back, and put it back on the right track. Oh yeah, take it back. Oh, take it back, and put it back on the right track. Oh, take it back, take it back, take it back, take it back, and put it back on the right
And that's right, folks, we're going to take our country back. We've seen in the first half of the show we can do it. So I haven't felt so positive about things for a long while. This is really great, but we do have to talk about some of the negative things that have been going on. So a little bit of that in the second half of the show. So let's start off by showing how much the couple living in the White House really, really hate Americans, really, really hate cops, really, really hate this country. Some very, very definitive proof. Now, Freddie Gray, who is the guy that died in Baltimore and sparked, if you like, all those riots. Well, he didn't. They were all sparked by George Soros, as we all know. But anyway, he was the instigation for these riots. According to CNN, hardly a right-wing outlet, he had 20 criminal cases filed against him before the police arrested him, and then he died. Obama honored this crook by sending a cabinet secretary, the chair of the Obama administration's My Brother's Keeper task force, and an advisor in the White House Office of Public Engagement, and someone from the Office of Intergovernmental Affairs to his funeral. So 3 key people from the regime sent to this crook's funeral. Now, it's very sad that he died. We need to find out why, and if there are bad apples amongst the cops, they deserve to be punished. But there's a lot of unanswered questions there. And while these are unanswered questions, to say, well, why should the person living in the White House, I can't even use the P word in conjunction with this a-hole. Why would he send 3 people to his funeral? Well, he also sent 3 people to Michael Brown's funeral. And remember, Michael Brown was also proven to be a crook. So you say, well, okay, he wants to do that. These at the time it was thought that maybe they had suffered at the hands of the police. So let's give that idiot the benefit of the doubt. But now, this last week, there was a funeral in New York for a police officer who'd been cold-bloodedly murdered. Was there anybody from the regime there? Not a single person. Not a single person. Despite the fact that tens of thousands of uniformed police officers stood in formation outside the church and hundreds of others attended inside. Here was an opportunity to do some healing. Here was an opportunity for King Barry to show that the anti-police rhetoric should be toned down. Here was an opportunity to show that he is a president for all Americans, black, white, yellow, green, or purple. Instead, he shows that he is not worthy of the title president. He slaps the face of all of our brave law officers. Yes, there are a few bad apples, but that should not be reason for him to act like a 1960s civil rights activist. Oh, I forgot. That's probably the best description of this nutcase. He's lost in the 60s. And not just him. What about Muchel? Muchel showed her hatred of the United States and white Americans at a commencement speech at a black college this weekend, railing against whites and perceived oppressions and slights, as if she has actually been subject to any, wrapped up in her elitist cocoon that she is. I mean, it was this really racist speech. A commencement is supposed to be a positive launch into the world. Instead, the Queen put the fear of God into these students. Oh, no, sorry. I should say, scared them silly. You know, you know how the regressive abhorrence of anything faith-based. But just, I was disgusted at this speech and how the First Lady, again, can be so biased. She's supposed to be the First Lady for all Americans, but it was such an inflammatory speech. It was worthy of Al Sharpton, and you know what a low-life bottom feeder he is. Okay, folks, time for another commercial break, and then we're going into the last segment of the show, so stick with me. I'll be right back.
Reporting from the eye of the storm. This is the worst weather we've seen in quite some time, folks. And I don't see any end in sight. People have been calling in from across the state complaining their basements are flooding. One guy said he now has an indoor swimming pool in his basement. I told him he needs the waterproofing innovations from Basement Systems. If you want a dry basement or crawl space that will weather any kind of storm, you need the patented solutions from Basement Systems. You've seen them on home makeover shows throughout the country. With a lifetime warranty, every solution is custom designed for your basement. Call now for a free estimate, and you'll never have to worry about storms like these again. I'm predicting this storm front is heading your way, so call Basement Systems and relax.
Call 800-205-8665 for your free in-home inspection, or visit basementradiooffer.com. That's 800-205-8665, or visit basementradiooffer.com.
I've owned my company for 14 years now, and I can tell you that payroll is a 4-letter word. I hate doing it. It eats up hours I don't have, and it costs me money I could be saving. But my accountant's too expensive, and I'm not sure who to call. But I know I need help.
We're Paychex, and we take all the hassles out of small business payroll. We save you time and money. It's easy. Call, fax, or give us your payroll information securely online, and we take care of the rest. We calculate the correct taxes, manage payments and direct deposits. We even send out your checks. Payroll doesn't need to be a 4-letter word anymore. We're so sure that we can save you time and money that we'll give you a month's payroll free. Just for calling 877-750-5371. Get 1 month's payroll for free. Call Paychex right now. 877-750-5371. That's 877-750-5371.
This is Patrick Come Lately Talk Radio, coming to you live via the internet, via rebroadcast on WRSDB, the Red State Talk Radio Network, or from the recordings at archives.patrickcomelately.us.
And thanks for sticking with me. We're into the last segment of the show. Time flies when you're having fun. I had a whole pile on all sorts of things going on around the Clinton Foundation as it lurches from scandal to scandal to scandal to scandal. I think I could do a 2-hour show just on that, but I'm not going to. So first of all, I'm going to do my weekly summary, just short items I want to do some comments on. That's right, the Patrick Come Lately weekly summary. So first of all, I want to talk about gay weddings and the direction these things are going. And I've had a few discussions, even in my family now, about whether or not you should bake cakes and weddings, etc. I want to make one thing very clear. I have nothing against same-sex unions and same-sex couples. You know, everybody should be free to live the way they want, right? As one of the founders once said, what does not pick my pocket harms me not. However, I do believe that the government should not be able to tell churches what they must or must not do. And one of the next steps, I believe, with this whole wedding cake and wedding photographer thing is that, first of all, they're going to do this for cake bakers and photographers, and then the next step will be to force churches to have to marry gay couples. Now, again, that's the theologians say this is totally against the Bible. It is a debatable point. You can also say Jesus said turn the other cheek and welcomed the sinners. So it is a debatable point. However, it is a religious debatable point, and the government shouldn't get involved with that. So how do I think the government's going to do this? Well, there's one way that the government can use the force that they have, the power, and that is taxes. So what they will do, I believe, is when the time comes, they will force churches to either perform same-sex marriages, or they will lose their tax status. And I believe and I hope that a lot of them will stand on principle and give up their tax status. It will be a hard blow for many of them, but I think that is what they should do, because the government should not be mixing itself in religious affairs. As we've seen also with the Affordable Care Act, they did that. That's wrong. That's definitely against the First Amendment, the most important one. So we'll see about that. Then another topic, of course, over the last 2-3 weeks has been the whole thing around the Pamela Geller free speech meeting in Texas, where a couple of jihadists came to try and kill people, and of course the left just went totally nuts and were talking about how this was stupid, and a lot of right-wing people. I was very disappointed in Bill O'Reilly, who said, "Well, Pamela Geller is being provocative, and that shouldn't be allowed." Trump said the same thing. Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Trump, but you just lost me for a vote. No chance there anymore. And I thought, well, what about this analogy? What about rape victims? In years gone by, there used to be a defense that they dress provocatively, and the left said, "Oh no, you can't do that. People should not be able. That's totally bad. You can't say that they brought it upon themselves." But isn't that exactly the same what Geller is doing? She's dressing provocatively, and the jihadists are coming like flies to a honeypot. So, folks, another example here of liberal hypocrisy. Do I have time for the last? Yes, very quick. Here's a tweet from Carly Fiorina, and this is from a little while back, about a week after she announced. She said, "Carly's been a candidate for 8 days and has answered 322 media questions. Hillary has been a candidate for 30 days and she's only answered 8 questions. One of those questions she answered with, 'My accomplishments as Secretary of State? Well, I'm glad you asked. My proudest accomplishment, in which I take the most pride, mostly because of the opposition it faced early on, the remnants of prior situations and mindsets that were too narrowly focused in a manner whereby they may have overlooked the bigger picture, and we didn't do that, and I'm proud of that, very proud.' I would say that's a major accomplishment, and I will let you folks think on that over the next few days till the next show, because that is a bunch of malarkey. And folks, it's time to say TTFN. Thanks for joining me. See you next week.
Thank you for listening to the show. I hope that you enjoyed tonight's topics. Whether you listened live, to a recording, or to a rebroadcast, I appreciate the time you share with me. We need to spread the message of liberty far and wide, so please tell your friends and family about the show. Thank you for helping to keep the beacon of hope burning. This is Stefan, your Patrick Come Lately, signing off. God bless America, and remember, L3, long live liberty.